Hi everybody, Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And as far as we can see, we may have got it wrong as we have once, twice in the past, it's number 192 in Sounding the Shallows.
Yeah, and I know there was a problem last week, wasn't there? So some of you got a double dose of 190, but we're pretty sure it is 192.
And it's not because we were so incredibly proud of 190 that we thought you'd like to hear it twice. It was some gremlin in the works, but never mind.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, we were wondering about this week and wondering whether this applied to other people, because there's just cracks in the winter now, aren't there? And that feeling that you want to go and do something. I don't think I've felt like that very much over the last few weeks. It's been so dreary and miserable here.
Yeah, there was a lady in the churchyard I met today who was giving me a nice lecture, on how to spread your snowdrops. I won't go into it, but there was something rather beautiful about preparing for the best possible sign of spring next time in more places. So it was nice to hear that, and it is true.
We saw there,
winter aconite, and today is a warmer day, and that's very nice too. So yeah, it's good.
Well, the other day we, for the first time, really, we went to a place called I say the first time, it is the first time we've been to this building, but it's also the first time we've gone off and done anything really this year. And we went to a place called Seaton, I hope I pronounced this right, it's Seaton Delaval Hall.
Yeah, well, I think that's
what an extraordinary place. It's a vast house. And apparently, we're talking about it beginning with Norman knights, but then going through so many generations of family, from hard-working, industrious and industrial families to...
Can we just say first that it is a vast building?
It's vast. It's absolutely vast.
We're used to going into very carefully organised bits of corners and sort of largish rooms. But this place is big.
It's really big.
And to get into it, we had to find a place where I could negotiate my electric powered chair, which we did. And there was so many rooms, weren't there? Anyway,
there were so many rooms and so many people who've been involved over the years, and so many. What it actually said about this house is that it was a byword for scandal, a scene of theatrical performances, wild parties, elaborate pranks, a charred relic.
Sounds like our marriage.
A glowering ruin. Thank you very much. A faithfully tender survivor, a national treasure.
Wow.
And in a way, it feels as though it's one life which has gone through all these phases of amazing architectural design by John Vanbrugh. And then something called the Gay Devil. Now, have I pronounced that right?
I don't know.
The Gay Delavals. I don't think I pronounced that quite right, but they were a scandalous bunch, and they had wild parties in which they broke the furniture and they played amazing tricks on people. And then after that,
what
there
sort
was
of tricks?
Well, there was one where, and you could see this when you went round, there's a wardrobe. And if you were staying there, you would open this wardrobe, maybe to put your own clothes away, or your valet would put them away. And there's a giant, sort of amazing wig in this wardrobe with a ship on the top of it.
I suppose you had to be there, really.
You had to be there. I felt that about quite a lot of things. Here in these wild parties, there's an upside-down room where if you lay on the floor... it looks like the ceiling, and you look up and all the furniture is upside down.
So there's nothing
this
on
is
the
beginning
floor.
to sound...
Do you mean there's nothing on the floor?
Nothing on the floor at all.
And on the ceiling, the room? The floor of the room?
Yeah, the table, the desk, all the bits of paper, all hanging down. You would feel quite worried, I think, and pretty seasick. But there's all that. But then there was a massive fire which gutted the whole building. And then a family inheriting it who felt that they maybe could bring it to life, and now it's National Trust. But I suppose what I felt was you know, we talk about the change within lives and how change is possible, and how sometimes things go very badly wrong in your own life, and how sometimes there are good patches and constructive patches. And it felt as though this house had a life,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
including what appeared to almost destroy it, the fire,
Yeah.
and then people loving it back into something else.
Yeah, I unfortunately couldn't see all those things because I couldn't get the chair upstairs, which
know.
was unfortunate. But you were, I haven't seen you quite so struck by a place of this kind before. But part of it seems to be because there is still, I mean, the National Trust has acquired it, and obviously, but the cost of refurbishing and repairing must be huge.
And I don't think they're planning to refurbish all of it, because it's their story of this house and this family that went through this fire, that during the 2 world wars it was just used as a sort of barracks. It's rotten in places, and yet you can catch and feel what it was, what it maybe was at the best of it, what it was at the worst of it.
All right, well, here's a question then. If they completely redid it and got it all smartened up, cleaned the walls, which it need a lot of cleaning on the outside, and if they furnished the rooms and they had little kiosks and desks to give people information, all the usual stuff, and so there's a building that is functioning and is interesting to go around. What is the actual, I haven't got an answer to this, but what is the actual value of being easily and interestingly informed about that life of that building? What does that add to it?
Well, I'm going to throw it back to you. What do you think? I mean, I suppose I've almost said it, that it represented to me a life, something that's full of hope and excitement to start off with. Somebody with huge ambitions, you know, that period in your life where maybe not all of us, but I know, because we were sort of 60s people, we felt we could go anywhere and do anything, and the owner of this house thought he could expand it with this great architect designing something amazing, and then it all going out of hand, getting too much, to the point that there was then the fire, and it broke it, and then it needed gradually, carefully, bit by bit, being loved back. I suppose that is what I felt. It was like a life.
I can understand that, but if you equate it to a life, and I find it particularly relevant at the moment because of looking back a lot over my life. I don't know why. I keep looking at the bits of my own life, and not just because of this building, but for some time now, and saying, you know, if I am what I am now, how could I have been that? How could I have done that? How could I have been that unpleasant at that time when I remember for the rest of my life? When I gave up on things, when I recovered and thought I can do something with my life, I can be something else. And interestingly, I mean, as I come towards the end of my life, towards the
beginning of possibly thinking that there might be.
Well, yes, but the interesting thing is that we've mentioned this before. I think the National Trust hasn't actually taken over my life in order to rebuild it, but that in the end, the story is part of who I am.
Yes, I think that's what I thought.
The things that happened contributed to who I am, rightly or wrongly, and for better or worse. But I couldn't have acquired some of the more positive things I have in my life before. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't grown up enough for it. And obviously still there are problems. But I like the idea of the depth of life and the detail of life and the wreckage of life and the successes of life continuing to be part of the person that you've become.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, we're talking about a building as a parallel, and that is a thing made of stone and made that doesn't have much of a say in what can happen to it, but it's still somehow standing. And I think when we look at our lives, we have to be kind, like the final person who inherited this building and wanted to love it back to life and make it a home. And I think we have to be kind about the time. You know, there are bits in me that they rise up in me, and I don't want them there, and I'd like them to have never been there, and I don't want that bit of me to exist. But it does, because it did, and it no longer impacts me. And maybe we need to look at those bits of our lives where, like you say, it went wrong, partly because of what happens to you, but also because of what you jolly well do yourself. And certainly there was this period in the history of this house where they were extremely destructive and wild and silly. And I think, though, you have to look at it and say, well, that was all part of it, like you're saying. That was part of maybe growing up. But I know a lot of people who just don't want that bit of themselves. They can't face it. They can't believe that could be part of who they were. And maybe we have to love those bits back to life within us.
I'm not quite sure how to think about that. I mean, we've known people, as you know, who did some really quite bad things in their lives, and the way we put it in the end, we know the thing in Revelation about Jesus saying, knock on the door, and Jesus, me knocking, let me in and I'll come in, and all that. And there are some people who are still furnishing their inner selves, the home in their heads, with stuff that is now from the past and should be placed in the past. Not forgotten, because you can't forget the very bad things.
Could at least be put in the cellar.
But there's a sort of obscure form of celebration of bad things. And just listen, what I mean by that
listening, yeah.
is that if you say it, if you expose it, if people know that that's you, then they have the choice of either accepting you as you are now or not. And it's a kind of false challenge. I do remember a few years ago a youngish chap saying to me, can I talk to you? So I'd got to know. And when we sat down together, he said, I want to tell you some things about myself that you won't like. Which is rather daunting. And he told me, and it was quite unpleasant what he told me, but what he was saying to me was, I want to be your friend, but I don't want you to just be a friend to the person you think I am.
Right.
Because that's a part of me, what I did. And I really appreciated that. What is difficult is when people repaint instead of repent. They decorate the stuff that have happened to make it visible.
Hold on,
it's a
can
bit
you
obscure.
say it again? Sorry.
Well, let's
just
imagine
that bit.
Let's imagine someone who is haunted by stuff he, she, or whatever did, has gone through whatever was required in terms of punishment or disapproval or whatever, but simply cannot put it on the shelf. Jesus comes in the case of the Christian thing, and says, why have you got that picture of yourself as you were? What is that for? And you said, because I want anyone who comes close to me to know that that's who I really am. And he says, no, but it isn't who you really are, it's who you really were. But if the you are now is this you, you don't need to do that. There may come moments when you will talk to someone honestly and fearlessly and with good reason.
Yeah, because there are times when there are times when you do need to do that. That would be in order to finally put something into words, finally bring it out of the cupboard, finally place it out there for somebody else to see. Test the water, if you like. I'm using loads of different images, but, see, am I still acceptable when I've told you the truth? And sometimes the answer might be no.
Yeah.
But, the honest truth of this house is all things, including some tremendous contributions to industry at one point, including some beauty in the building that is quite exquisite.
The gardens.
And then the
fantastic,
gardens.
yeah.
And somehow that's where we settled, wasn't it? After all of the story of the house, really. We walked through the gardens, or you didn't walk, actually.
Trundled.
You trundled through the garden, and there were so many snowdrops, and there were so many tiny daffodils not yet out, but just coming through the earth, as much as to say, blow the house. This is where the real beauty is. And it was enchanting, wasn't it?
It was really lovely. In fact, it was more than that and less than that. It was. I've always liked a bit of bleak. when I was young.
You do like a bit of bleak.
I do. When I was young, and I used to go and lie on the landing at night, in the middle of the night, to sleep under a blanket in the landing, because it took me away from the whole of the rest of the world, and I felt quite safe in the bleak. When I was in this house, I felt a little bit like that. I thought, this poor dear house has been through a lot and deserves a bit of tender, whatever it is you call TLC, which it's getting from National Trust. Do I mean National Trust?
Yes, you do.
Yeah. And being repaired, renovated, made good, doesn't mean that you lose the basis and the structure of what you are. It means that somehow you're becoming what you were always meant to be when you were first made.
And maybe it is because of the impact of the house, but it brought memories to me, Adrian, of a time when you could have walked through those grounds, and I know people who would understand this completely, and not seen the beauty.
Yeah,
because
true.
depression has the ability, doesn't it, to block out sounds that are beautiful, to block out sights that are beautiful, to block out feeling and even smells that you don't. Spring can pass you by, in other words, and it's not that's what you want to happen. It's like some horrendous cloth over the whole thing. And I was looking after we got home. I'd love you to read this because it is about daffodils. And to me, when you wrote this, you had been very depressed for a very long time. And I thought, there's a tiny glimpse of something coming alive.
Well, certainly a beginning, yeah. I'll read it, yeah. It's just called Daffodils. Daffodils are not flowers. They are natural neon from the dark earth. Precious metal grown impatient, beaten, shaped and dipped in pools of ancient sunken light, folded, packed and parachuted through to stand and dumbly trumpet out the twice triumphant sun.
Yeah, I suppose that's what this spring, and there's so many people we know who are going through, what did you call it? The bleak.
The bleak,
the pit.
yeah.
And some of them maybe not enjoying it at all, but not able to move away from it. You can't just step out of it if you're there.
I met someone a while ago, some time ago now, who told me about his view of the world, and he clearly had some difficult times and was trying to emerge into being somebody. And it was really quite charming in his reticence, but he did say that he can't take the world as it is. He can't handle it. He loves history. He looks at the past and it feeds him. And there's something in him, I could tell, that didn't want to really move forward away from safe bleak, in a way. And yet there was a courage in him that was so admirable. And I mean, I just yearn for anyone whose life is there where you're thinking, I'm not much, I can't face the pressures on me to become these things and do these things and say these things. But that's not wrong. It's right. It's just about how you do that without rushing foolishly into things that are bad for you or
too difficult for
don't help you or too difficult for you.
Yeah.
And there is a great sweetness left for those who want to repair and renovate and build and see beauty again.
Yeah, but like with this funny old house, it needed to be loved back to life. And there was this family who inherited it, who moved from Norfolk to live there and make it their home with their dog and their cat and their children, and love the bits of it that still stood back to life. And we've got to, even if you don't feel there's somebody doing that for you, you've got to do it for yourself. Love you a little bit more and think, I deserve to be loved a bit and to be cared for a bit, and I'm going to do it to me. Maybe it's a week of treats for people who, or maybe just going out and seeing if there are any snowdrops around. Or I'm sorry, Australian people who listen to us, we're rambling on about winter going into spring.
That's why, I mean, in that passage I mentioned, Jesus says, I'll come in, as we've said so many times, not to read the Bible, not to have a prayer meeting, but to eat together, to sit down and be close and say, how are you doing? And find a place to move on from and draw some lines and say, look, it's going to be okay, bit by bit, bit by bit.
Well, as always, we love to hear from you, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.